Welcome back to my workshop. I haven't made a video for a couple of weeks, so let's see if I can remember what to do. In this video, what I want to do is try some resin casting. I've been entrusted with a baby's first curl. Can you see this? So I only get one shot of this. So I've done a practice on a couple of bits and pieces, some of them more successful than others. The first one was a complete disaster. It's almost a week ago and it's still wet. Then I had some more success with this sort of thing and a little bit of a flower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this. The first thing I will do is make a mould. So I'm going to make that out of this. Let's try that. So what we need to do now is find the volume of this cube. We know it's 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters. If we were clever, we could work it out, but the best way to do it is fill it up with water. Now we need to find the volume so we know how much resin to make. So what we need to do, get a small jug of water. This one's got measurements on it. And this also checks to see whether or not it leaks. So we're going to fill this up to the very top. Okay, get rid of that. Now without spilling it, I need to pour this into here. Right, before we measure that, let's dry this out. Just a bit of paper. So the last thing we want is any water in our resin. Okay, I'll give that another dry in a minute. So, looking at our measure here, we have got 120 millilitres. Okay, lucky for us, this is all very nice and simple. So the volume is 120 millilitres. All we need to do is, because the ratio, if you look on the what we're going to use here, it says by volume, which is how we're going to mix it, is 100 to 50. Yeah, so we need twice as much resin as we do hardener. I'll explain this again in a minute. So 120 millilitres, we need to divide that into 3. So divided by 3 equals 40. So we need resin, we need 80 millilitres, and hardener we need 40 millilitres. That's it. That's the only tricky stuff. Right, so we don't need this water anymore, so we can get rid of that. We need to dry this out completely. So what we need next is we need some resin, some hardener, a stirring stick. We're going to use this jug. So let's mix up some resin. So we know our ratios are 2 to 1. So 2 of these to 1 of these. And we need 80 millilitres of this, and 40 millilitres of this. So let's measure it out. Right, okay, if you look on the jug here, I've marked a couple of little marks. This is where we want our resin to go to, and then this is where I want my hardener to go to. So let's try that. Got to be as accurate as we can. Okay, that's the resin. Now obviously we're doing this by volume and not by weight. If we was doing it by weight, we'd have to measure it out on a set of scales, but we're going to do this by volume because I don't have any scales. Right, what you want to try and do is avoid pouring it too high because you may get bubbles in it. So all I'm going to do is use a stick here. Let's move this so you can see it. Use a stick here and actually pour it down the stick, then it's not blobbing into the resin. So now I want, this is my hardener, pouring the hardener in till we get to our second level. Stop just before it. More. Obviously the more accurate you are, the better mix you're going to get. Okay, that's pretty good. I don't know if you can see it here, but you can see this top bit here is the hardener and this bit is the resin. So you can see it hasn't actually mixed together. So what you got to do now is mix it for a couple of minutes using a fairly wide spatula. I'm just using a piece of wood here. And what you have to do, don't mix it too fast because you'll end up with bubbles. But you can see it's got this creamy colour. It looks like wallpaper paste. Now you have to just keep on mixing it, keep on mixing it. Okay, I would probably do this for about 2 or 3 minutes just to make sure it's fully mixed. Don't mix it too fast, you'll get bubbles, which is a no-no. Right, I'll carry on mixing this and I'll come back in a minute. Right, okay, so been mixing it for about 3 minutes now. Let's stop this thing. Okay, right. And if we look, it's got a few small bubbles in it. Hopefully we'll be able to get those out when we pour it. Now make sure you've got into all of the edges. Make sure there's no bits of hardener or resin that are separate. And there's a uniform mix. Okay, there's a few bubbles. hopefully we're going to be able to get those out. Right, doing that. That's our resin mixed. Okay, so we now have our resin. Now the idea is, obviously we want the little lock of hair to be in the middle of the mould. So what I've done is, because we know this is 50 millimeters high, obviously I've measured 25 millimeters here. So if I fill the resin up to the 25 millimeter mark, we know that's halfway. Okay, so this is where it all goes horribly wrong again. Right, pour it quite gently because you don't want any more bubbles in it. So pour, 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 pour. Pour, 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 pour. Okay, so we're halfway there. Yeah, so now what I have to do is I'm going to leave this for about 2 hours so it starts to go gel-like, and then when I put the lock of hair in it, it won't sink to the bottom or it won't float to the top. That's the plan. Now obviously the eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed, obviously I mixed up my entire volume. Now I shouldn't have done that, I should have only mixed up half of it, because by the time this has set, whatever's in the jug will be setting. So I'm going to use this for something else, and then mix up another batch to fill up the top of that. Now what I've decided to do, this is nothing to do with the lock of hair, but what I've decided to do is I have in here one of my coasters that I made. I've put a quick frame around it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly float some resin on top of that and see what happens. Okay, this is obviously nothing to do with the lock of hair, but let's see what happens. Okay. So I can use this as a demonstration actually. Right, if we look in here, if we can see, let's get the camera in the right place. Got a few bubbles. Okay, now what I need to do is obviously try and get rid of those bubbles. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do it, but the best way is probably using a small blowtorch or a lighter, something like that, and we should be able to just gently heat the surface, and it should, I don't know if you can see it, I'm hoping you're catching this in the video. Obviously don't overheat it, but you can actually, what it does, it heats the air inside the bubbles to the point where it bursts. Pop. Okay, now obviously what we'll do now is we'll check this, see if this has got any bubbles in it. It's actually quite bubble free, so I don't need to do it for that. Okay, right, let's leave those cooking. This one for 2 hours, and this one I'll just leave it until it's done. See you in 2 hours. So while I'm waiting for the resin to set, or for the first 2 hours, what I've done is I've quickly cut a small piece of wood, which I'm going to use as the base. It's a nice little piece of hardwood. Come over to the CNC machine and come up with a quick design for a base, which has got a little recess in it that the actual resin will sit in, and it's got obviously his name and its first curl. So this shouldn't take too long to do. I've moved the resin out of the garage for now because I don't want any dust actually settling on the resin. So I'll start doing this while I wait for the resin to dry. Right, okay, so we're now 2 hours and we've got a gel. It's basically a gel, and the reason I wanted a gel is so the lock of hair doesn't sink. Now obviously I get one shot at this. This is the lock of hair, and I need that to go there. Okay, see there. Okay, right, can't do anything else with that. What I'm going to do now is go and mix up my next batch of resin and then pour it in here, and then it'll be done. Hopefully that shouldn't sink now. Right, I'm going to go and mix up some resin. Right, I've now mixed up my resin. Here's the resin. I've only mixed up half of it this time. Silly me. Okay, and all I've got to do is pour it on very carefully. Trying to avoid bubbles. Oh, right. It's not quite level. I need a bit of something. A bit of paper, that will do. Okay, we'll be sanding this down afterwards to make sure it's perfectly square. Okay, there's a few bubbles on the top, so I'm going to use my blowtorch, this one here, again, very gently, turn it down. And it's got all the bubbles off of the surface. I'll leave it a couple of minutes and then I'll do that again with the bubbles and then leave it for 24 hours. Okay, so now I can't use the rest of my bench because it's covered in resin. So far we've got this much of the base. This is obviously where the resin is going to sit. It's got Monty and it's got his first curl there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to round off these corners by using a circle, just to draw a line around the corner. Just a line on this side, and this side, and this side. Okay, this is no particular radius, it's just this happens to be here. So I shall round that off on these corners on my sander, and then I shall route around the edge to give it a profile. So to the sander. Okay, next step is to round around the edges with the profile. I've got this OG quarter drive router piece, router bit. I've mounted my small palm router into my vise. I shall put it in there and then profile it like this. Now, I've done this many times before, but you have to be very careful. So let me just set that up. Okay, so now I have my small router securely mounted in my vise. okay, with my OG bit in here. Now you can see this profile here, and it's got a bearing on the top. Now the idea is you move your piece of work around it, and this bearing presses against the top of the wood so it won't go any further. So providing your piece of work has got the desired shape, you should end up with the right profile. Okay, so I'm going to give that a quick go, and I might have to move the camera because it'll be dangerous if I leave it there. Okay, gives you this profile. Okay, so the base now, if you can see, it's got the name engraved in it here, the words engraved, but they're not very deep and they don't show up very well. So what I want to do is have these black. Now the best way to do that is first of all cover the whole thing in shellac. That seals the wood and it also seals in the letters. Then once that's dried, give it a quick coating over the letters with some black paint. I just tend to use normal automotive black paint. And then once that's dried, then you sand the whole thing off and it leaves the letters black, but the rest of it is back to bare wood. And then we can varnish it afterwards or wax it. Okay, so let's do that. So this is the shellac going on now. Just a quick coat. This will all be sanded off again afterwards. Use a paintbrush if necessary to get into the letters. Okay. So if you don't do this coat of shellac or some sort of protection, when you put the black paint on, it'll actually soak into all of the wood. And then you won't be able to see the letters properly. Okay, so I'll just leave that now to dry. Okay, so now the shellac has dried. Need some black spray paint, which I've been shaking. I need some very expensive paintbrushes, £1. Let's take one of these out. Okay, trim it off a bit because they're a bit. Okay, paintbrush, spray paint into the cap. Okay, so just black paint on your paintbrush into the grooves. Okay. Obviously don't get this on any bare wood, otherwise it will stain. Okay, leave it to dry.